Welcome back to the Wolff Den, presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Cosmo DeNicola to the Wolff Den. Welcome to the den.
Well, I love that. I love that intro. You know, I don't know if I was a reliever, maybe I'd want that as I was coming onto the field, or maybe as I was coming out of the locker room, going onto the field to play football. So that was a great intro. Thank you.
I appreciate that. It's built by Canva. It was one of their musical choices. It's sort of like if TikTok, you can just kind of put, I probably need to get a new one and an outro, but that's for the high-end productions. We're not quite there yet, but we're at 276th episode of the Wolff Den. So, man, it's been a wild ride so far, and there's no slowing down. We're really, really glad to have you here. For the people in the audience who don't know who you are, give it just a quick intro, and then let's get into it.
Sure, I'm just a guy, right? People call me a Philly guy. I was born and raised in Philadelphia to a family of immigrants from Italy, and basically been in the Philadelphia area my entire life. And I was fortunate enough to found, and take a lot of businesses to the next level, and had a good business career. I'm a family guy with a wife that I've been with over 50 years, 2 children, 2 grandchildren, and all the reasons in the world to wake up and try to do good every day.
I love it. I'm not sure if we talked about. So I met you at the Steinberg Super Bowl party, and we're going to talk a lot about Steinberg and your relationship and the stuff that you guys do together. I'm not sure if I told you this, but my wife and her family are from Bensalem. And so they actually were all out in Arizona for the game. They're big Eagles fans.
I lived there in the 70s, so that's not too far. And it's home to one of my parents' favorite place, the Parks Casino. So Bensalem since I lived there, has really grown and has some neat things in it. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey myself, Marlboro, New Jersey, and the family has since moved over the bridge into New Jersey, living in the Berlin and Cherry Hill area. So still Philly at heart, still close enough to Philly, from Philly.
Wait a minute now. Would that have made you a Giants fan?
Me, I don't even ask. I'm a Broncos fan. I can show you my. I am going to show you. That's how we do it on the Wolff Den.
Spontaneous. I like it.
I am a Broncos fan, and these are the first memorabilia I ever had.
Wow. Well, Elway had my background, and one of the reasons why I developed a relationship with Lee Steinberg is I was in the arena football business for 13 years. I owned a team of my own, and then I ended up being a partner in the Philadelphia Soul for 9 years. And of course, there were these classic Elway versus John Bon Jovi commercials, and at the time where both had an arena football team. So it's kind of cool to see some Elway things and just remember those clashes in the arena football industry.
Yeah, my favorite athlete of all time. But I would say that I probably root for the Giants more than the Jets. My brother's a Jets fan. My dad was a Giants fan. My friends are all split, but it's interesting. It'll be an interesting season, especially if Rodgers and OBJ get there. Should be real interesting. Well, I want to start with the Steinberg. I know it's probably not in chronological order here, but since I met you there, you have a relationship with Steinberg, which I'd love for you to talk about. And what I witnessed at the event was the presentation of the Steinberg DeNicola Humanitarian Award, which has, I guess, tell us about that. Is a great group of people on there talking and really some great acceptance speeches.
Well, initially, my relationship with Lee started in 2014. And as I said, I was in the football business. I also at that time was in the talent management business for actors in television, film, and theater. So I had two areas that were very complementary to what Lee did in representing players and talent management, and also at that time exclusively in the football business. So we connected in 14. I became a partner, and I'm an equity holder in the company with Lee, so I'm his business partner. And in 2015, there was all kinds of bad things happening with, players and behavior, and uh, they were the things that were being publicized about the NFL and players in general. So we realized that we didn't want the issues of a few to be a poor reflection on the goodness of the whole. So we initiated the Steinberg DeNicola Humanitarian Awards to acknowledge players, owners, front office types, and coaches that do wonderful things, giving of their time and resources and energy to help those that are underserved. And we're up to 41 winners since 2015. And it's a very exciting day as we bring some people and give them an opportunity for others to hear their stories and how they've given, how they've cared, how they've shared. And hopefully the goal is always to amplify the message of goodness and hopefully inspire others to do the same in the sport as well as outside the sport.
Yeah, I could. So this year, Nancy Lieberman was a recipient, right? I got that right, didn't I?
Yep, Nancy
Yeah.
Lieberman, and as
And
part of
Odessa
my,
Jenkins. The
oh my
two of
God,
those two, their speech really stood out to me. And
Odessa Jenkins is unbelievable. She would be a motivational coach in anything she did, a life coach and sports coach. She's just full of energy and full of positivity. And, I really respect her. I didn't really know a lot about her before the award selection, but man, what an amazing person, what an amazing lady, what an amazing leader. Nancy, of course, we all kind of knew about her, right? She was a superstar, and it was kind of comical to be on football's biggest stage in a baseball stadium, giving an award to a basketball player. So it's kind of neat. But those two were really powerhouses, and we were excited to acknowledge their contributions.
yeah, I did get a chance to speak with Odessa. I hope she'll join the Wolff Den at some point. It's a powerful conversation about, well, it's motivating, but it's also about, being good and doing right, and then trying to. I mean, there's so many issues, I think, in the world that you can tackle, and it's like, well, what do we tackle? I just
Right.
posted today about mental health. Do we tackle mental health, or do we tackle racial justice, or do we tackle women?
Diversity,
Yeah, I mean,
sports,
and
the
all of it,
answer.
right? We need to talk about all of it, but
Yep.
if you have an event or you have a platform, it's hard to do that. So you have to try and find the right people to amplify all of that, and it's tough.
Well, if you can find a way to amplify goodness and create joy, that's a winner no matter, how isolated or how specific the segment that you're focusing on. But when
Yeah.
you have someone like her come up on that stage, she is about so many things. A lot of our award winners have done great things within their community, football centric, let's say. So she was really an outside the box selection, and justifiably so. And I would suggest you get her on the den because she'll light it on fire.
Yeah, what I like about that is it's not the usual suspects that you see everywhere saying maybe the same things, but also they've been recognized already.
Right.
And it's not that they shouldn't be recognized, and that it's just that when you have a new wave of people, the new thought leaders, the new people who are doing good, who can bring a different, I think, a different spin on what's going on. I think it's better for your program, your event, and just everything in general.
Well, we do a lot of different things, and we're always looking for some sort of meaningful purpose. So you're right, things have changed now, right? Before people wanted things, now they want experiences. Before, you could hand out a turkey on Thanksgiving. Now you want to find a way to, have some sort of sustainable, food offering and things of that nature. So when it's new people with fresh ideas, I think we all benefit from that.
I think the bar for being a good person, and there's no definition. I mean, there's things we know right and wrong, but the bar for being a good person, it's pretty low. I think it's not that difficult to be a good person. Would you agree with that?
You know what? I just wish it would come natural to everyone.
Right.
But you know what? It is hard because one of the things we've learned in our philanthropy and in some of our local charities is it's hard to give because there's so much need and it's so diversified that to be able to find people to help is actually harder than you would think. So
But
I do.
sorry, I want to interrupt you there. I understand that portion. I'm talking about just you're in your world around being a human being and being good,
Yep.
not having to help because you don't have to help. You don't have to give your time or money to help to be a good person. It helps to do that, but you can be a good person without doing that. So that's what I'm saying. The bar is pretty low to just being a good person in life.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a good example of that, right? A lot of times I make references to Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa was helping the poor and the sick and the indigent in Calcutta. And as she walked the streets, she realized that there was so much sickness, poverty, that it was impossible for her to help all the people that needed her help. So she transitioned in her thought process and said, you know what, I may not have enough food for the hungry, I may not have enough medical care for the sick, but what I could do are two things. I could smile and I could touch people. So, based on what you're saying, right? There's nothing wrong with smiling. There's nothing wrong with, it's easy to smile. It's easy to look someone in the eye, and it's easy to care.
There's science behind it. There's science behind just smiling at someone and what that can do for their day.
Well, don't tell Bill Belichick that, but that's maybe outside of Bill that.
Who's more miserable, Bill Belichick or Greg Popovich?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I have a great New England Patriots story. One of my businesses, we provide systems to companies that manufacture packaging. So one of the questions I always ask are, who are the three people that were the most significant influences over all of those New England Patriot championships? And, people will say, of course, Brady, Belichick, and Kraft. And I'm like, no, don't forget us, because it was our software system that enriched him to put him in a position to buy the team and do all the things he did. So that's kind of an internal trivia question that we use.
I was just kidding. I know Bill, I think it's a persona, but even like people like Saban, who I hate just because I'm a Gator, it'd be pretty cool to hang out with him, I think, because I think he'd be funny and engaging. They can be that way.
Well, look, let's face it. If you're someone who's organized and motivating people, and you express love in a different way, but and every coach I've been around really is full of love. It's just in the way they express it. Same way with parents. It does, just because someone's a strict disciplinarian doesn't mean that they're incapable of love and softness and gentleness and all that other stuff.
You got talk about things that are easy to do and don't cost a lot. Tim McGee is a connection of mine on LinkedIn, and he does a thing every week called the Good Guys and Gals. And all you got to do is nominate someone and you recognize them as a good guy or gal, nothing to it. Hey, I want to recognize Joe. He, I don't know, he did whatever. It doesn't even have to be anything. And he posts this and he tags them, and a lot of people see it. I nominate as much as I can. I also created a Team Player of the Week award, which I was giving to people and said, hey, here's the Team Player of the Week. If you know someone who should be. I get no nominations for mine, so I stopped doing it. Tim gets maybe one or two. On a good week, he gets three. And you're talking about thousands of people who are seeing this, and no one wants to bother to take the time to just email them and say, hey, why don't you recognize this person? I mean, that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of really good people who do amazing things, and a lot of people that don't want to be acknowledged too. So there's that part of it. They're uncomfortable, and they don't necessarily want that. But we tend to focus on negativity. I wake up every morning, turn on the television. It's a cliche. All you hear about is murder and mayhem. And again, that was the motivating forced to start the Steinberg DeNicola Humanitarian Awards, was all of the bad press players were getting. So, people do great things. Just acknowledge them in whatever way you can, and the awards is one way. We're also looking at expanding the awards within our family foundation to focus on science and healthcare, because in those areas, there are things that are amazingly impactful and can impact millions of people. And those people are usually quiet behind the scenes. It's and their focus is not. Their focus is on creating new drugs, creating new techniques. Helping people, and they're really not looking for a pat on the back, but they really deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Tim's thing is they don't even know. They're surprised about that, which is even better to be like, hey, I wake up on Friday morning and I just got tagged in this whole big network about how, hey, I'm a good person. It's just it's strange. It's just strange to me. I don't know. I can't understand why. When people are, there's a lot of negative, as you said. I'm surprised. I haven't turned on and watched a thing about today, and there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes today. I haven't watched a second of it, and that's usually something I'd be interested in. I guess I was too busy, or I don't really care that much anymore because it's like the lead up to it. But I want to know, has this ever happened to you, or what would happen if someone who you've given this award to had gotten into something? They got arrested. They did something that's, illegal, moral. I mean, there's still you got to toe the line between that, but you got to see, like, there's got to be a threshold for what makes it. Have you had that happen? And do you have conversation about what would happen if it does?
Oh, we had it happen to one of our award winners, and we removed him from the site, and really don't acknowledge him in our count in terms of the number of people that have won the award. It was someone that actually received the award because he was able to overcome some issues while doing good. So it was really, two wonderful things that happened. A person that had challenges and difficulties and rose above it, and while simultaneously doing good in the community. But he then slipped back into some challenges, and we just didn't feel comfortable acknowledging that person any longer. So it did happen. If it was borderline, we probably wouldn't have acted so strongly, but it was something that made us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we just thought at that point we needed to do something about it. And my career in business, 40 something years, I've always learned that, sometimes your first instincts are actually your best instincts, and not a rush to judgment. But, I kind of felt that, we needed to do something. My partner agreed, and we did.
Yeah. And that could have been a situation. I mean, you can tell me that was probably a situation where you thought this might happen because we're giving something to someone who had this. And there's always a chance that whatever that was comes to light again. And that's probably a chance worth taking.
But you know what? It really is, because, whether it's someone that had an alcohol problem, a drug problem, some situation in their life that, may have been created as a result of other factors, and they rose above it. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, can they kind of drop back? Can they have a relapse? Can they have a lapse, et cetera? But guess what? All of us as human beings could potentially slide back or do something poorly. So whether you had issues in the past, if they were severe, it may be an indication that they potentially could reoccur. But, we consider all of that before we make choices. And, so far, 1 out of 61, 1 out of 62 is a pretty good record.
Yeah, not bad. You guys it's a humanitarian award. You have a foundation that's doing philanthropic work to make the world a better place, to promote good behavior and good people, and to make people better. And what is something that, if you can just eradicate it from the world, what would you choose? I mean, you're trying to make the world a better place, right? And there's so many options that we talked about at the beginning. Is there something, if you could just snap your fingers and this segment is gone, that
Well, obviously, obviously it will be, hunger, right? But, beyond hunger, we do a lot of work in Africa, and there are so few basic services that you need. We did a couple of projects with two orphanages, and they were orphanages where both parents would have died, and as a result of HIV, and the children are in the orphanage, and we're trying to get them an education, trying to give them good health care. So, obviously food, healthcare is big. It's one of our global health is one of our passions. We focus on that. Um,
I would
and
get rid of. I mean, you're snapping your fingers. We can't. But anyway, I guess my first thought went to cancer. But I guess that's
well, cancer's, healthcare, obviously, but I mean, food. At the end of the day, when people wake up not knowing where a meal's coming from, or when you go to third world countries and the meal isn't coming from anywhere.
But
Uh,
that's, you know what? It's, I don't have money. And I'm no one to tell you how to spend your money. I'm not saying you in general. There's so much money that's wasted that could be used to solve this problem, and enough people don't care. I look at the elections alone. The amount of money that's spent on elections is, it makes me sick just to think about it.
Well, the funniest story is, well, it's not really funny, sad in a sense, but to reinforce your point, uh, in Africa, the Gates Foundation provided hundreds of millions of dollars of nets to prevent malaria. And instead of them being used for nets to prevent malaria, they were used for fishing. So, a lot of money does get wasted. A lot of times in the continents like Africa, when you try to do good, you have governmental influence that can present a challenge. In the U.S., if you try to do good, politics sometimes can create a challenge. But if you believe in your mission, you move forward. And what we try to do is, we're a kind of boots on the ground foundation. So, we like to not only write a check that does some good, but we like to be there to execute,
Yeah.
some kind of value to the people.
Yeah, I think that's important. Money, it's great, but where does that money go to? How is it used? What else can you offer that's not monetary that might be able to help him fix? I mean, food feels like money is a fix, right? We need to feed people. We buy food. We provide it to them. Not different. It's different than cancer. We give money. They do some research. They provide some. So to me, that feels like something that should. And forget about. Let's just talk about the U.S. I'm concerned about the world.
Right.
I'm always concerned about the U.S. first, but even just within the U.S., the homeless, the hunger, and all of that, it feels to me like that should have been solved already.
Well, there are a lot of government programs, but again, you run into situations where, as an example, in the school system, the public school system, it wasn't too long ago that, they really didn't feed students, right? So over the last 20 years or so, there are a lot of programs where you could feed students breakfast and lunch for free. But they're usually, the breakfast is before school, but there's no way for the students to get to school
Yeah.
because the bus runs on a certain schedule. So there are things that are practical challenges that prevent us from, quote, solving the problem. However, if we were focused on it and we were apolitical, we'd be more effective. But we're not apolitical.
Do we have any idea how much it would cost to end hunger in the U.S. or homelessness?
Well, I don't know the number, but I know we're certainly capable of doing it, and things prevent us from doing it. How do you solve the homeless situation? Okay, you could put more money into mental health programs, or you could say, let's just pick people up off the street and feed them and house them, and all these things have complications. But we don't focus on what we can't do. We don't focus on what's difficult or impossible. We focus on what we can do, and we take joy in that. And we try to see it all the way through and execute on it to make sure that it's good. And some of the things aren't about cancer and aren't about food. We do a lot of things local that relate to conservation, and in particular our local zoo. And I've done some things with supporting some programs, outreach programs that they have that relate to the Underground Railroad and civil rights and things of that nature. So we try to spread it around a little bit so we can touch a lot of different things that are meaningful to people, and let the big boys do their things while we're a little bit more boots on the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting too when you talk about, like, if I have $1 million, where do I spend that money? Do I spend it at the things that are lower on the priority list that don't get a lot of attention because that could be a huge thing? Or do I spend it on the top sort of priority list that maybe can push some things, through and kind of be a complete solution for people? I don't know. What do you guys have a policy on that, or sort of?
It's interesting when you talk about money. A lot of times when I'm talking to people, I'll say, like, would you rather be rich or famous? And 90% of the people say, we'd rather be rich. Who wants to be famous? If you could be rich and you'll be able to get whatever you want. And the way I get back to them is say that there isn't anyone in the world that's rich enough to change the world. But there are people that are famous enough to change the world. So whether it's $1 million, $1 billion, or $1 trillion, it's not enough to fix all the world's problems. However, if we all work together, unite, and we give people of influence that influence good behavior and influence helping each other. I do a lot of things. I'm on the board of directors of what's called the Papal Foundation. And what the Papal Foundation does is the Vatican gets requests all year long from around the globe, requesting funds to support different things like building a school, fixing a church, something caught on fire, an education program needs to be resolved. And these requests come into the Vatican. And unfortunately, the Vatican actually doesn't have a budget to fund these type of projects. So 140 families in the United States got together 20 years ago and built this foundation. And so what we do, the Vatican provides us with a list of things from all around the world, and we kind of vote internally, and usually, have 143 requests. We're granting 140 of those requests, and 2 weeks from Monday, we present them to the Pope in person. And so what we're trying to do is do some good things. And back to what my original point was, whether you're Catholic or not, whatever your religion is, the Pope is someone who's powerful enough to motivate people to do good things. And guess what? He's not rich.
But I'm Jewish, so I don't know about any of that. I understand the power of the Pope, but isn't there also politics involved in that and religion?
Sure, there always is. People could say, look at what the church did. And, obviously I don't want to go down that rabbit hole here and talk about that. But as a person who strongly believes in the church and in his faith, I'm totally comfortable with supporting those activities that help people, around the world, because we have to be very careful to exclude people and to be so U.S. centric. We do a lot of work with the U.S. State Department and the United Nations, and we do cultural diplomacy. So a different charity called the Humpty Dumpty Institute that my daughter is the vice chair of, and I'm on the board out of New York, been around 25 years now. And we get funding from the U.S. government to do programs all around the world. We've done film programs in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've brought music to the Middle East. We've brought jazz to Russia. We currently have a program going on now with Russian filmmakers that's supported by the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. So, we want to enlighten people on, these worldly situations, and that the more we work together, the better all of us will be, not only abroad, but at home as well.
Are you going to present personally to the Pope?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Have you done that before?
This will be my first year, but 2 weeks ago I was with the Pope. A group of us just finished making a movie, and the Pope agreed to see some of the clips. So
what is that like? I mean, there's not a lot of people spend time with the Pope.
Well, it was very exciting for everyone. There were 30 of us, and it was very exciting. Unfortunately, it was the day the Pope got sick.
Oh,
So he came in, sat with us, watched the clips, interacted a little bit, and we were supposed to have some personal interaction with him, and like literally quietly got up and left. And one of the cardinals came in and said, "Look, he's just feeling really ill." He ended up in a hospital a week later, as you may know, and he's recently been out of the hospital and seems to be strong, and hopefully we'll get a chance to
years
interact.
bad
But you're in the presence of greatness, and when you're in the presence of people that could change the world, it's really it, it makes you excited about what you could contribute and how you could be a better person. And sports does that too. I mean, as a Philadelphia person, being around Allen Iverson, when he was playing, and his exciting brand of, you were just so energized by all of that. And the Phillies and the Eagles and their run towards their respective championships this year. You want to be part of it, and you feel good about it. And that leadership and excitement, I think makes you a happier person, full of joy, and you can express it in a way that's good for all the people that are around you.
Is the Pope someone that you have pretty constant feelings for, regardless of which pope it is? Because we don't have that in the presidents, right? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Right. So each pope's different. I did my daughter and I just came back from Poland, so we went to Warsaw to do some projects with Ukrainian refugees there, and to visit what are called the righteous, 100 plus people that during the Nazi era, who were Christians, protected their Jewish friends from the Nazis. And we did trips to individual homes of these 100 plus people that are still alive, and delivered them gifts and things of that nature, and food and stuff like that. So that was really a great experience. I'm going to come back to that. But when we're in Poland, if you were to mention the Pope, it's not Pope Francis, it's Pope John Paul II, right? He's like their Pope. It's like if you're in Green Bay and you mention Coach, you're talking about Lombardi. So each Pope has their during their reign, for lack of a better word, had some philosophies and things of that nature. Pope Francis, which is wonderful, has been more open and inclusive, and willing to talk about things that in the past people weren't willing to talk about.
You almost have to. I mean, it's hard. It's just hard to not. Even if you like, even like if you're talking the U.S., it has to be talked about. Now, whether or not change will be brought about, that's a different story, right? Because there's different parties about it, which is different than the Pope, I think.
Well, now, with the church and the Pope and dogma, right? The Pope is the ultimate authority on things, and it's not like he could be ousted or anything like that. So he is the boss. And with Pope Francis, it's been wonderful, 10 years, and he's been much more inclusive, willing to talk about gays, willing to talk about LGBT rights, willing to talk about divorces, things of that nature, which really haven't been talked about in the church.
Yeah. So, and then this would be probably for a whole nother episode, but as I mentioned, I'm Jewish. For me, being Jewish is it's my race. I know a lot of people don't understand, but it's my culture, it's my race, it's my people. The stories behind it, I can take it or leave it. To me, it's like telephone talk conversation. I don't know how much of it is true or not true, so I don't live by it, which is a little bit different than, say, the Pope and the teachings, which is following what's written. So isn't that kind of what the hesitation was? That maybe some of that is contradictory to what everyone's been reading or taught?
Sure, but again, the church and the Pope and what his thinking is, dominates the conversation and who the other parties are. So, like in the case of Pope Francis, he was able to name a bunch of cardinals recently that will be the people that would vote on his replacement when he would pass away. So he gets an opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say stack the deck, but, add some people that would continue with his thoughts. Now, just to follow up on my two granddaughters and my daughter-in-law are Jewish, and they're excited about meeting the Pope. They're not going on this trip, but, they're very excited about that. They
I'd
recognize,
be excited to meet the Pope too.
they recognize, what he's all about.
So, I didn't get to ask you this, but I was like, what percentage of the U.S., let's just say the U.S. because it's hard, are good people? I don't know if it's 50-50. I don't know. I mean, again, what's the definition of a good person in this? So inevitably in your dealings in the business world in this, you're going to come across people who don't align with what you are thinking, and that's aren't necessarily bad people, but that they're not you don't associate them as good. How do you navigate through that as you're trying to partner with them or work on things? Or do you just say, hey, look, there's a certain threshold, and again, we don't know what that is, but there's a certain threshold that you have to be in order to be a part of our organization, a part of our board, someone who's going to be a face of us, who's going to represent us?
Well, when you're looking at a board, you want someone, first of all, that's going to really care, right? You want them to be impactful, energetic. You want them to be engaged. There's a philosophy on boards. Go, get, give. Either get involved, give money, or go, leave. So when you're on a board, there's a lot of boards with rich people on them, and they write checks, and it's good, right? Because that's a currency that every foundation or charity needs, right? Currency is important. So the check writers are great, and then there are people that are get involved, right? They do all the work and they hustle around and make things happen. And then there are people that just like the fact that they're on a board and it sounds great at a cocktail party, and that's where it's wasteful. So whether it's a business board or it's a charity board, personally, I'm always looking for people who will, get involved. That to me, that's more important. And then if they can give, that's nice too.
But you do have to work a little bit with the people who you don't believe that they believe in what you believe. I know that didn't.
Very little.
Yeah,
very little.
Very little.
Yeah, and I would say
is that a luxury you have because of who you are and what you've built? And is that?
Well, it's a luxury because of what we're involved in, right? So it doesn't mean it's someone that works for the American Heart Association is not a caring and loving person. They may not be. They may, for whatever reasons in their life, not be. But I do want to disagree with you. I think most people are good.
You do.
And
you're with Luke Bryan. I believe most people are good.
Yeah, and I believe that most people have the ability to be even better if given the opportunity to do good things.
Well, I would agree with that. I would agree that most people have the ability to be good, but I don't know if we're just. Yeah, I guess that's right. You know what? Because I do. Again, you don't have to be good or bad. If you're not good, it doesn't mean you're bad.
Well, I mean, the opposite of good, if you say, well, we got good and there's bad, there's a lot in between good and bad, right? Yeah. So when I look, there are a few bad people in the world, but compared to the number of good people, very small number. So what's the problem is, what's the problem that needs to be solved is getting people to be motivated to do things. Because everybody gets involved. They get married, have children, grandchildren, careers, blah, 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 travel, all this other stuff. And every once in a while, they get a glimmer of being good. And social media has been great about that because now someone can donate $5 to someone's fund or do this and all these GoFundMe things. It's an opportunity for people to be good and feel good about themselves and participate in goodness. So I think the potential to build goodness is great, and I think social media.
I agree with that. I agree.
However, there's the opposite side of the haters, the mean, the negative, and that exists in all cultures, all times. And social media can bring out the bad in people as well.
I think that there's not enough deterrent for bad behavior. I talk about this all the time. And that's why there's so much bad behavior, not necessarily a bad person, but bad behavior. There's no consequence to doing it. And that's what I think, like, again, and probably for a whole nother conversation, but that's what I think the significance of today is, holding someone accountable, because if they don't, then other people are going to be doing it. It's the same thing. Like, let's just talk about taxes.
Right.
Like, if you don't make someone pay the tax and there's all these loopholes, of course they're going to do it.
Well, one of the things that I look at is holding people accountable for their opinions. I mean, there are some things that people express that are just downright terrible,
Yeah.
and they get away with it. And for me, when that happens in my, let's say, people I connect with on social media, what do? I don't fight them. I unfollow or I block or I do something, just basically move them out of my life, because I don't want to be around that toxic behavior. Who was that? Britney Spears? No, toxic. Who was
Yeah.
that?
That's
Britney,
you're,
right?
you're right
That's
in here.
funny.
You're right
I
in
didn't
there.
mention that one, but so I still believe in goodness and positivity. And when you talk about the issue of holding people accountable, I mean, in our large cities, you don't have to look too far now with you know the movement of trying to let people rehabilitate themselves. Now, I've always had a philosophy that too many people are in jail for too long a time period. Right? That's a general philosophy, but you need to follow it up and say, well, if they're not going to be in jail or they're going to get out of jail faster, how do we help them?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
the recidivism rate is like 50%.
right. Well, how do you bring that down? Over the last 25 years, the amount of deaths from breast cancer has gone down 2% a year. Right. So we're focused on that. We're spending money on that. I'm willing to spend money on, helping people, but there really aren't any programs because it's a punishment system. And now people are saying we're punishing too many people for too long of a time period, but they're not doing anything about it. I had a good friend of mine tell me once that his experience was that people leaving jail are just as scared leaving as the day they went in, because they're going back to a life that just brought them to jail. So
It's easier to do what they know than to try and learn. It's tough. Get out of your comfort zone. Take anyone who's working or hasn't worked in forever and try and put them in an environment where they got to work and do something. Did you watch any of the women's basketball?
no, I've watched highlights and stuff.
Yeah. So they're talking about a bad opinion that's harmful. Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports called Angel Reese a classless piece of shit on Twitter. 2.8 million followers.
Right.
Now, I agree with him that what she did was over the line and unsportsmanlike, because she kind of took it too far. But and maybe you think it's classless, and that's okay. But when you put that classless piece of, and you have 2.8 million followers, and there's people who follow this guy blindly. Hey,
Yep.
rah rah, let's throw fire on the flame. I think that's kind of the stuff you're talking about, right?
Was he eating a slice of pizza at the time? Right.
He doesn't know any. I ate in New Jersey at a pizza place that he gave an 8.8 that I wouldn't even give a 7.
That's funny. Well, I saw a lot on social media, and generally I avoid that kind of conversation, but I jumped in this time and I said, wait a minute, I'm guilty as charged myself, because, I was in the arena football business, and 13 years, 7 years, we got into the championship game, and I lost 4 in a row. I never believed that I would win. So trust me, when I finally won, I was doing this too.
Yeah, I'm okay. I think she kind of followed her instead of go celebrate with your teammate. That's almost the problem that I had. My number one rule: win, and then you don't have to worry about it. That's how everyone says, right? But there's just ways to go, and I think the coach probably, hopefully, took her aside and say, "Hey, come celebrate with your teammate." They're saying act like you've been there. Well, they haven't been there, and they're young, right? But there's a difference between an 18, I don't know how old she is, 20-year-old girl in the moment, woman, whatever, in the moment, doing whatever, and a grown man who's got 2.8 million followers to write that. I mean, I think what he said is much worse than whatever she did.
I really don't have a problem with what she did, and I don't follow him. And given what you said, he said, That's really terrible. And people sometimes make these statements without thinking it all the way
They're
through.
like the hot takes, and everyone wants to be like. But not only did he make that take, it just shows up because I don't delete people. I like to see what people say because I need to kind of. I mean, he must have made 30 posts about defending his thing instead of just being like, you know what, I think it was wrong. It probably shouldn't have happened. I overreacted. My guess is he lost money on it. I have no idea. Now it becomes a black and white thing, which maybe it is. I don't know. There's
Well,
probably
people try to turn things like that into that, and in reality, it wasn't. It was young people. One person that probably crossed the line and was, a little too aggressive about it. But
yeah.
you know what? You can't take everything serious and extend it to a boiling point, or you're always going to be trying to deal with a crisis.
Well, in this day and age, the aftermath is almost always bigger than whatever. Almost like the cover up was bigger than the crime. That was a Nixon thing, right? I think.
Well, I thought, of course. Well, I forget. Someone once said 90% of the people that go to jail for federal crimes, they go for something they did after they did the original crime.
Yeah.
Basically, the cover up is used.
Right.
But you know what? Maybe it's age. I don't know. But I've gotten to the point where I don't try to get a little crazy on these situations and kind of let them evolve and dissipate. Social media, of course, has a hard time with that because someone always wants to pick it up and take it to the next level.
It's great and it's terrible all at once. I mean, you know, I think you got to live with the bad to figure out what the good is, but the bad is bad. And, bullying, I just posted today about this kid, 13 years old, took his own life, died by suicide. It was a baseball star and he was bullied. Yep. And some of it probably has to do with online, but it's just much easier to do, to bully someone online, to bully someone anonymously, to talk a big game. It's a big problem, I think, bullying. And then, talk about how does that get mental health, and it's all together. It's all
mental health is a big issue. And the origin of that really is the insurance companies' unwillingness to really treat it as a disease. So, when we hear about alcoholism and drug use and, people put forth a philosophy that it's a disease, right? It's not a weakness. It's not a vice. It's a disease. Well, accepting that, if we accept that, then, mental illness should be treated as a real disease. And why should mental illness receive less support from the insurance industry than cancer or heart issues or anything else?
Yeah, I champion for mental health with an organization called Same Here, and the information's on the bottom. So if you know anyone who's dealing with mental health issues, please reach out. There's a lot of good resources. We operate with the hashtag 5 and 5, which means everyone is dealing with some sort of mental health issue, which is different from the 1 and 5, which is a mental illness. And then a big hashtag is that mental health is health.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we tend to have a focus on young people with the suicide rate going up. But I just read an article that talks about seniors and depression and anxiety and things of that nature when you get old. And, so you go see your primary care doctor and you say, look, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm whatever, sad, I'm listless, etc. And he has two things he could do. He can give you the name of a recommended person to help you with cognitive therapy, or he could prescribe a drug. So 9 times out of 10, they prescribe a drug that may solve the symptoms, but don't solve the problem. And now if you're talking about a 65-year-old senior citizen who's going to live 20 more years feeling like that, more needs to be done, young people and also seniors.
And the people, like you mentioned it earlier, the homeless. I mean, if you address the mental health of the people who are homeless and poor, and that, even just in itself, the mental health, that experience is 100 times better. Even if you can't get them out, right? Because that's what I see. I see someone on the side of the road who's homeless, and they're just talking to themselves, and you can tell that there's something going on there. This is a mental health issue. It very easily could happen to you or me.
I can honestly say in my life, I've never seen anyone who's like looking for money on the side of the road or something, that didn't look like they had a mental health issue or some sort of addiction. I mean,
Yeah.
and as a result of that, those people don't get a lot of help because people have that attitude. But I think mental health is something that we have to provide: food, mental health, and equal access to pharmaceuticals. You know, the word nowadays is health equity. You know, being able to get someone that lives in a rural area the same kind of health care that someone in a city near, you know, one of the most sophisticated educational hospitals. How do we make everyone in this country have access to that? How to, you know, whether it's race or gender or location or age, whatever it may be, giving everyone equal access to that. And pharmaceuticals are really important because that's what keeps us living over the long haul and living comfortably.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. There's so many problems. It's just hard to but as long as what we talk about with same here and mental health is keeping the conversation moving forward, and that's what we need to do for all of this, is just making sure that we're pushing ahead and not stagnant, or even worse, you know, losing ground on whatever it is that we're trying to tackle.
Well, you can't do everything. So to your credit, you pick something that you believe in and you stick to it. You try to be as impactful in it and at it as you possibly can. I learned real early on, you know, we have four passions in our foundation, and it's cultural diplomacy, global health, conservation, and humanitarian award recognition. So there are four passions, and I wanted to narrow it down because at one point I was in charge of sports sponsorship for one of my teams, and I reached out to McDonald's. And I thought I had this brilliant idea of how I was going to connect the dots for McDonald's. And they said, listen, go to our website and take a look, and then, you know, put in your information there. So I went to McDonald's website, and they were very direct. Like, I'm going to paraphrase it. You know, this isn't the way they said it, but very direct. We only care about these things. So if you want to bring something to the table that's relevant, go for it. If not, don't waste your time.
And that sounds rude, but it's targeted, which is good, because there's other people who will do the other stuff that they don't do. Right. This is what we're good at. This is what we're passionate about. This is what we have the resources for, whatever that case may be.
And stick at what you do best and where your passion is, and where you want to make investments, right? I mean, but diversify a little bit, because diversification is always good, because you learn something from one thing that you may bring to the next.
The mental health thing, like the story I shared, if you read the article about this kid, they told the story and shared it, and it was shared to a random person who wasn't connected, who obviously went to their kid and be like, hey, are you okay? And found out that this kid was not okay. And she told the mother, like, you saved my son's life, just by sharing the story. And like, I've shared my story. And once you share a story like that, you never care about sharing it again, whether I'm talking to you or if I'm in front of 10,000 people. Nobody cares, but it'll impact people who you never even know had a problem, who never knew you. People reach out. So that's just sharing your story and just talking, and not getting up in front of people to talk about, you know, whatever you see at these conferences, like these motivation and how I got, you know, TED Talks, and like, we need more of the other stuff. The people who really survived something that could give you a lesson and hope that you can be okay, or that you can share with someone else, that could make people just, I don't know.
Well, you know what? There are people like that. And, you know, one of the examples I like to use is my son, who was part of our family businesses and recently left to pursue his dream of creating a weightlifting gym, bodybuilding gym. And I said, well, you know, what's your motivation for doing it? Because when people talk about, I want to be rich, I want to make money, it's like, okay, that's to me, that's not really appropriate. But his motivation was, I really feel I can help people. I feel like I can help them not only do things, but I can help them by sharing my personal experience and journey. And then I can bring them along with me, not just tell them what to do. So I was very proud of my son to, you know, say those things. And And it made me feel that my wife and I did a good job in raising him. But more importantly, uh, he cares. And if you care, you'll bring some goodness to it. And hopefully that goodness creates some joy.
I mean, it's hard not to care and be want to do good. If I assume growing up in your household and be around you, you would either care or you'd be like so sick of people who care and do good, which I don't know how that happens, but it happens that you really go like a 180 and turn the other way, which
Well, doing good. There are jealousies in that world too. We're contacted. People have these ideas, and we're like, well, it's not really in our wheelhouse, or we're motivated to do a little something, but we don't want to make a major investment, and it disappoints people. When you say no, or when you say yes, but you do it at a lower level than what people expect. Um, so there is, even in the goodness world, there's a lot of jealousy and self-interest because people have passion for what they care about. And so what we try to do is focus on 4 major projects a year, so 1 a quarter, and then do something local every other week. So that's 26 local projects and 4 major global projects. And so far it's worked out, and we found a balance that we're comfortable with.
what I want to talk real quick about your business background because you made the joke about Belichick, but none of this happens without the business decisions and stuff that you've created and done and made and been a part of. Chicken Soup for the Soul is one of them. That's something that people might know
Sure.
about.
Well, what my wife and I,
But there's a lot of it.
basically,
Like, how did you get into?
our first business, out of the box was technology, and it was creating software back in the 70s, with guys like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and creating software for manufacturers. And we built those businesses that morphed into 3 businesses over 41 years and sold them 2 years ago. Uh, then we got involved in healthcare. We had 4 businesses in healthcare, a chronic disease management company that helped people through digital health devices monitor and get help with respiratory illnesses. We had 2 companies that implemented electronic medical records in the hospital. So you can give us credit or you can complain about it, depending on which side you are. And then if you've ever been in a hospital, you see these carts that get pushed up to the bedside with computers on them. We're in one of every 3 hospitals in the country providing that low tech but important technology.
It's like Bob's Barricades.
Yeah,
They're everywhere, right?
and the other things I mentioned, we were talent managers, not agents, in the for actors and actresses in television, film, and theater. And of course, I've been partners with Lee Steinberg for 9 years as a sports agent. So that's been very rewarding. And I'm trying to think of, so they're the things. In Chicken Soup for the Soul, we have our book publishing division, which is our private company. And then we have a public company that is a streaming company that does video on demand under.
But you're an investor, a part owner of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yes, I'm on the board. I'm an investor. I was there early on when we bought the brand from a couple of guys that were motivational speakers, and we took the brand and elevated it now. So
How important is it to be early for these things in today's day and age?
early, and I wasn't necessarily an investor. I was more of an operator and accelerator. So I had a good eye for talent. I had a good eye for energy, and because of being in business for so many years, I had the resources and knowledge that I could bring a lot of value to entrepreneurs that wanted to take something they were doing and kick it up 2 or 3 levels. So I kind of helped with that. So, but I was an operations, hands-on type of guy, not just an investor who wrote a check and waited for dividends to come in. And
Right.
that was a lot of fun. And the way I refer to that is when I owned a football team, I was at practice. Before the game, I'd be on the field with the players when they were stretching. At halftime, I'd be in a locker room. And after the game, I'd be in the locker room. So with my partner, Ron Jaworski. So I was very hands-on everything I did. And when people say, what's your style? I'm like, hey, I'm a locker room type of owner. And my uncle, who used to own racehorses, when I was very young, he said, Cosmo, he said, you have to make a decision. Do you want to be up in the grandstands and come down when your horse wins a race and take the picture in the winning circle? Or do you want to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning when your horse is being trained? I said, I'd rather be there when a horse is being trained. And of course, in the winner's circle. But my main goal was to be on the field in the locker room. And as my business career is kind of, coming to an end, my operating career is coming to an end. I really miss that the same way an athlete would miss being in a huddle, being in a locker room, being on a field with their teammates.
What business did you enjoy the most? Gave you the most just enjoyment doing, not gratification, just
football.
On a day-to-day basis?
Football, without a doubt. I was a fierce competitor, and I loved to win. And I got close to the players. I really enjoyed the strategy of building a team and having a great coach and doing everything I could to provide our team with the resources they needed to win, and then traveling with the team and, crying when bad things happen, celebrating when great things happen, and just being part of a real family. And
who was the best player you ever had on your team or played against?
Whoa, I'm not going to answer that question.
Right. Mr. Rogers, did you see his documentaries?
Yes.
He's the gold standard of being a good person. My opinion, there's never anyone like him. There'll never be anyone else like him. Now, I don't know him personally, but to me, if anything ever came out that he wasn't exactly what we thought he was, it would shock me to no end. For my money, the person that I know about and I hear, that person would be Tim Tebow today. I don't put him there. Who would shock you the most if you heard some bad?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Tim Tebow, right? So in the last company I sold, we had a large room. It was think of it as a giant conference room, and we called it the locker room. And I actually had Tim Tebow's locker in there with his spikes. And people are like, well, did you represent him? I'm like, no, we never represented him. However, I like what he represents. So he would be someone that I'd be, shocked if he ever, did something inappropriate. But, I mean, he played for the Eagles a little bit, but that wasn't really it. A friend of mine, Vince Papale, who was featured in the movie Invincible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story I love, and Vince and I are very close to each other. And the neighborhood kid that wouldn't give up and made it. And he only played 3 years, and he never made the Super Bowl team because he got injured and ended up getting cut the year before. But his story just resonates with every Philadelphian in the same way. He's our real life Rocky.
Tony Danza, Tony Danza played him?
No.
Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did Tony Danza play?
Tony Danza played a school teacher in the Philadelphia public school system.
In the movie?
No, in a television series. He was a Philadelphia school teacher.
I thought he was in a movie about sports somewhere. I don't know. I'm getting
things crossed. Could have been, but it was Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, Marky. I remember that.
He was tiny compared to Vince. Vince is a big guy.
Yeah.
But I admire guys like that. When with my ownership, we had lots of great players, and when people tell you that the losses are harder and lower than the wins are jubilant and high, that is absolutely true.
I believe it.
I express it this way. I've hugged so many naked men in the shower who were crying their eyes out after a significant loss, a championship loss. And, people are like, what are you hugging me? I'm like, look, we're just there. We're crying. We feel terrible. We let ourselves down, our families down, our friends down, our fans down. And most people don't see that pain. They only see the players, brooding or, nowadays everybody looks like they're wearing a $10,000 suit. By the time they come out of the locker room, even after they lost, they look wonderful.
I
In
think if
our
you don't
league.
feel that way, maybe it's not right for you. You don't
Yeah,
have to be bawling crying, but
let me tell you, it is difficult. And Dick Vermeil, who happened to be a friend, as a Philadelphia Eagle Hall of Famer now, uh, he always talked about that too. And that's one of the things that hurt the first phase of his career, where he would be so emotionally connected to things that when he would lose, it would bring him down to a very dark place. And he was able to figure that out, solve that, and end up winning a Super Bowl and recently inducted into the Hall of Fame.
yeah, great coach. He was a known crier when he wins too, right? Wasn't he a known crier?
Known crier, and he said, I have this expression, love is bad for business.
Yeah,
And sometimes people love a product, they love an employee, they love an idea, they love themselves, and ultimately, I said, love is better for your family and your wife, not for business. Don't fall in love with something, because love is a deeply emotional feeling, and not that you shouldn't make decisions from your gut at times in business, but usually they have to be based on fact.
right. No, I mean the next question, and we're going to let you out on the final question is, what one piece of advice can you give someone who's looking to get into the world of philanthropy and the world of business? And it could be two separate things.
Find some. Well, it's not just find something you love, because
I've already found what I love. Now what?
now that you found what you love, you just go all out. And if you go to my website, cosmocares.com, there's a page called Champions. At the bottom of that page, there's a poem written by a recording artist called Champions. And it talks about 24/7, play every play like it's the last play, all those cliches we've had. So you got to go all out if you believe in it, and don't be afraid. Now, fortunately for me, I started from nothing, so I never had anything to lose.
Yeah.
So that was an advantage. So
Could
I
that
would
be for
say go
business
all
too?
out.
Could
And
that be for
then
business
on the
too?
philanthropy side, just get out and meet a lot of people.
Oh,
Because people always are willing to recruit you to help them, and then you could develop relationships. And at some point, if your business interests and your economic situation intersects with your network, boy, you can really amplify your own involvement as well as others.
yeah. I do not have the money, the platform, the fame, any of that yet. I'm working on it, but it's just as important, to start. You got to start somewhere, and you just never know whatever you're doing, how that's going to impact others.
Well, look, we talked about, you're Jewish. I talked about my grandchildren who are Jewish, and our Catholic Church during Lent, we have these little boxes where you put money in, and it goes to all around the world, right, to feed hungry people. And I made sure that I spent time with my granddaughters explaining what these boxes were. And it wasn't about our religion. It wasn't about being Catholic. It wasn't about being Jewish. It was about caring, awareness, and then doing something. So it could start with something as little as $1, $2, $5, $10. Wherever it starts isn't as important. The fact that it starts, and then you build momentum as life goes on.
And it's about recognizing the privilege that we have, I think, too, right?
Well, you know what? You have to be very, very aware of that. When I, sit down, my wife has this thing. She said if she ever wrote a book, the title would be "How the Heck Did We Get Here?" Because while we were on the journey, we didn't realize we were on a journey. We were just going all out. We weren't sitting there, measuring our accomplishments. We just kept going and going and going, trying to be parents, trying to be children, trying to be brothers and sisters and cousins and nieces and nephews, and just keep rolling on with life. And then you look up one day and you can take stock of things. But even at this point in my life, I don't really want to take stock of things. I want to just keep moving and grooving, and hopefully helping more and amplifying our message. And
Well,
you know,
yeah, I mean, I knew from the quick chat that we had and reading up on the award before it happened that, you know, you can look back at everything you've done to see the impact that you've had, which has got to be a great feeling. Um, I even look at some of the stuff that I've done, which is again nothing in the grand scheme of things, but to other people, it's everything. And that you just never know what it's going to mean to someone, whether that's a smile as you walk by, whether that's asking them, how are you really doing? Whether that's giving them $50 so they can do whatever with it, or if it's donating, $100,000 to something.
Well, one of the things on our website, a little saying there is that what people really want is your time and attention. And as Mother Teresa said, if you just look them in the eye and you smile, that can mean everything.
Yeah. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question that everyone gets. You might already have said the answer. You have 24 hours to spend with anybody in the world. They have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose and what would you guys do? I thought you've met the Pope already, so we have to get that. The Pope, I think, had in 275, I think someone has requested. I got to go back and look, but I believe the Pope has been an answer. Who would you?
So they have to be alive, and how much time do I get to spend with them?
You get 24 hours, a full 24 hours, a whole day with them.
It can only be one person because I'm thinking of two
It
guys.
could be like a group of people if they're kind of related.
Leo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt.
Oh, two. Well, which would you choose? Because that's two people. They're not
Come
connected,
on.
although they are.
Leo DiCaprio, because I probably would really want to analyze why the heck he didn't get on that door.
Yeah, he's doing some great things too. And Brad Pitt. I mean, there are people who are there's actors who are doing great things out there, and there's some more that probably should be doing more. Again, who are we to spend people's time and money? But look, they've it's not that they owe it. It's just that they wouldn't be where they're at without people like you and me spending the money to watch their movies. Right.
Well,
so that's where the gratitude thing comes into.
Platform is very critical. If you remember what I said, no one's rich enough to change the world, but people are famous enough to.
And they have that.
Yep.
They have that. Well, that's a great choice. Check out, I'm going to put it back on. Sorry about that. Check out the website. It's, Cosmo Cares is a website. You can find some of the stuff that he talked about. The DeNicola Family Foundation doing great things. Steinberg Humanitarian Award. His companies, which have some of the, as you've heard, some great uses in the world, advancing and helping people. Did you know that Cosmo is Kramer's first name on Seinfeld?
How can I avoid it? One other little plug on Chicken Soup for the Soul. Every one of our book has 101 inspiring stories, and in the history of publishing, the top 3 series of books ever published: number 1, the Bible; number 2, most people would guess this, Harry Potter; and number 3, Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Wow. So we're very proud of that, and there's a story for everyone in every situation, and they're always inspiring. Yeah, appreciate your time. I know we went overtime here. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at some more events and getting more involved wherever I can. Terrific. We got another great episode tomorrow, so stay tuned. Thanks a lot. Enjoyed it. Take care. Thanks a lot.